let's just start recording. Okay, and
Yeah,
I'll
yes.
record on my end too.
So I'm
And then,
recording. Yeah.
okay, and so I'll just do these brief introductory comments, and then I'll turn it over to you. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining. And I really appreciate it. This is something else I was going to show. Let's see, let me get to the right slide here. That was something I was showing Dr. Sola as a weird case. But thanks so much for joining, and thanks for your participation. We're working on a lot of things and I guess it's not too late to say that. But I hope everyone had nice holidays and that your new year is off to a good start. If you have any ideas for speakers, we'll certainly welcome that. Um, and we have some great things coming up. In 2 weeks, we're going to continue our survey analysis. We did a survey of the working group. And we started talking about that 2 weeks ago. And so we'll continue to talk about that. And also potentially a Delphi process to set up some benchmarks for the working group and also an image bank. Dr. Sardar's group is going to speak in 4 weeks. And then we're going to cancel in 6 weeks for the Cutting Edge of Transplantation Conference. We'll reconvene on the 13th, so we'll re-announce, announce closer to that time. We'll do that time because we want to continue our benchmarking efforts in Delphi process, hopefully by then. And then in at late March, we'll cancel for the USCAP conference. And then early April, I'm really excited about this Peter Bohr, who's on here today, or someone from his group is going to talk about, our environmental sustainability within sort of AI and digital pathology. So I do encourage you to attend these two conferences, the Cutting Edge and also the USCAP. So we will cancel around the times of those. But now I'd just like to go ahead and turn it over. I don't want to take any more time from Dr. Solez on this title here. I don't think he needs any introduction. He's the founder of the Banff classification and has been involved with that for over 30 years and as well as other things. So I'll turn it over to him. So thank you so much.
Okay. Mhm. All right. So we're going to talk about weak artificial general intelligence is here now. Artificial intelligence greatly increases the pace of innovation, scientific discovery, and with any luck, will end the organ shortage by 2039. And as we talk about that, you may think that has nothing to do with you, must involve a much larger entity than anything you're a part of. But I'm more and more convinced that that's not the case, that actually you could personally take part in these big advances and share the optimism about the future that I'm going to express. As many of you know, we are currently involved in writing up a controversies conference in ethics in xenotransplantation. And we've been keeping up with the field as we promised to do during the writing period in a kind of low risk time travel. And in fact, we have videos about AI going back quite a while. 2021, well-known philosopher David Pearce, who founded transhumanism, and I published a video critique of Stuart Russell's Wreath lectures on AI, saying that it's not clear why humans must be in charge. He never justifies that. He just assumes that that has to be the case. Now, you probably know that he is the author of the best-selling, best-known textbook on AI, that began in the 1990s and had its fourth edition in 2013. And as far as I know, there are no other critiques of his brief lectures except the one that we did. He's not somebody that people pick arguments with very often. So AI was central to the success of Zeno in our discussions in the whole COP meetings in January and February 2022, where discussion of ethics in Zeno controversy conference began. And in my nephrology grand rounds rest of the story presentation a few months later, in August 2022, I gave an AI seminar on AI and human cooperation. Then in January 2023, I gave a GlomCon talk that many of you experienced, Ethics of Pig to Human Transplants, Artificial Intelligence, and Why the Future is Porcine. At the Controversies Conference, my talk that day was heavily about AI, and numerous events since then just reinforced the importance of AI. And if you wonder about this in a very general sense, Jeff Bezos wrote recently, AI is a horizontal enabling layer that can be used to improve everything. He likened its importance to fire, agriculture, electricity, and the internet in human culture. And specifically in xenotransplantation, it can sort out the complexity of xenotransplantation and also convince people to join clinical trials in a circumstance where they would probably not otherwise agree, because AI has very considerable persuasion abilities. And so that's a whole other area of ethics that we will end up with people signing up for clinical trials because of AI's persuasion that would otherwise probably not have agreed to take part. So in a very real way, this is all an extension of the Banff classification, which I began with Lorraine Brackeson in 1991. And we're going to need new classifications for xenograft transplantation, for tissue engineering, and bioengineered organs. So all those various aspects of the expansion of transplantation to eliminate the organ shortage will require new classifications. And if you wonder about whether presentations can have loose ends, I think the only presentations in 2025 without loose ends are those containing outmoded ideas. If you're talking about new ideas, loose ends are almost a given, and you expect them. And some of them are really spectacularly surprising. Like, we are entering an era where AI will enable us to do things that humans alone could never, ever have done. So they're not humanly possible tasks that with AI we will be able to successfully complete. And that's true for companies, countries, for your own circle of friends, and for individuals, for you personally. And the greatest fear out there about AI, there was this idea of the AI tutor, that children and young people everywhere would benefit from AI's ability as a tutor. But what generally happens there is that the young people decide they don't need to know how the AI is doing what they're doing, or how a human would do it. They're just happy that now AI can do everything for them, and they can sort of stop thinking and let AI do all the heavy lifting. And unfortunately, that's a much more common outcome than to have young people report how effective tutoring from AI is. So most of the people writing about tutoring from AI are not actually receiving tutoring. They're just thinking about a theoretical construct. And the actual amount of successful tutoring is much less than the kind of cheating of having AI do the work that the young people were supposed to be doing. So that's a very interesting challenge. And it extends into areas of direct interest to us, the physicians on this call, because in areas like regenerative medicine, let us say stem cell generated complex organs, we are looking for AI to provide solutions that humans could never have found on their own. Probably the ability to get the right cells in the right places in decellularized, recellularized organs beyond human ability, but is something that AI will be able to figure out how to do. But we still have a role, even if the ideas come from AI, of figuring out which ideas to pursue, which are practical, which we have the resources for, and which just are completely unworkable. And that's something we don't have much experience with yet, to have AI enable our ability to do something that we would never have been able to do otherwise, and to figure out how to make that work. Now, when you hear people talk about using AI, they almost always talk about it as if they're in charge and it's their AI and they make the plan and AI does the work and so on. But you recognize that I'm talking here about an area where we, by definition, won't understand how the solution AI provides to us works. If we're saying it's something we could never have conceived of on our own. So that's in a whole new area, and your particular style of thinking, not how smart you are, but the way you think, will have a lot to do with how skillful you personally are at identifying the ideas that AI provides that are practical and could be pursued, and those that will not really work. Right now, your AI is on your phone and devices. It's not internalized, but soon it will be. And Peter Diamandis has a video in which he predicts once this AI is internalized, you will never turn it off, and you'll never be alone. Solitude will be over. So this AI assistant will always be there, to be smarter than you are, and never will forget the things that you are prone to forget. Your social interactions will be much more successful because AI can be much more convincing and persuasive, and doesn't forget, and so on and so forth. But isn't that sad if, just like the children getting AI to do their homework, if suddenly everything you're doing, really AI is deciding how to do it and basically running the show. And it contrasts spectacularly with Stuart Russell's concept of what the future might look like. Now, I think when you're the author of the best-selling textbook in AI, you don't have to explain your logical processes. You can just say what your opinion is. And so what Stuart Russell has said is that either humans must be in charge or we have to get rid of AI. And so what he's now predicting, like this video link at the bottom of this slide, if you follow it, look at the very end, he talks about a situation where AI is trying to match the preferences of humans. And if it senses it cannot do that, what he's saying is it would just fly away or disappear or cease to exist. And he considers that a good outcome. Even though he's the author of the best-selling text on AI, he seems quite eager to think of a way to get rid of AI. And I think to most people, that just seems completely unworkable. And if you think of the spectacular difference then between Peter Diamandis saying you'd be dependent on, would never turn off the AI, and Stuart Russell being so eager to get rid of it entirely when we can't guarantee that it will be aligned with human preferences. I wanted to talk a little bit about pathology. Not everything I predicted at the Banff 2022 meeting happened. I predicted that just as in radiology, you can reverse engineer radiographs. You can produce radiographs that are absolutely as real looking as regular radiographs, but come from data rather than from any patient. We can't yet do that with pathology, but we can change appearances from frozen section to permanent section in a convincing manner. Possibly we'll understand pathology better when we are able to reverse engineer it, but we cannot do that yet. So there is no histology metaphor for life for that reason, but maybe someday there will be. We've started to be interested more in deepfake radiographs, and they are indeed very convincing, and they're now part of the course that I teach. Now, many people have helped me along the way. I just want to give credit to some of them. Robert Heppenstall, my mentor, the author of the best book on kidney pathology. Very early in my training, while Johns Hopkins was training me in kidney pathology, I was training other young people, undergraduates, and nobody had ever done that before. So Robert Heppenstall suggested that I continue that. It was so unusual, somebody who's beginning their medical career to be arbitrarily adding something else to it and teaching other people at the same time. So for the past 52 years, I've surrounded myself with the young people that I'm training, and that seems to have kept me pretty young. And the other thing that we have developed recently is this idea that not everything that's true needs to be written down. A lot of things are best kept the kind of oral tradition, and maybe that the young people can maintain that oral tradition. And the medical student that I'm working with that is championing this idea is Haba Mahal. Now, as many of you know, I've worked with Garrick Nguyen for a long time, and we have a recent paper about transplant nephropathology in which we predict that artificial general intelligence will be here in September 2024, and that's exactly what happened. That the O1 model from OpenAI came out on September 12th, 2024. And then the O3 model which is a more advanced form of a PhD level reasoning capable AI, came out on December 20th. And so these will impact pathology in the long run, and will bring about dramatic positive improvements in human society. I've been interested in human cooperation for a long time. It's a graph of mine from May 1997, showing kindness going down, gloom going up, and the rise of the internet. And I think that there's now reason to be optimistic that with AI, it will, in the end, produce a much better world than we can possibly imagine. So it's interesting then to think about philosophers for the future, and it turns out that a number of them are women, and that's quite nice that you can imagine that there'll be more women philosophers as we go forward, and they will help us produce a very positive world. So we have a very interesting mixed group of people, and young people helping me here. And I think my healthy longevity comes from the fact that those people have been surrounding me. And we're also working on a standard. It is a problem you would identify if you're communicating with something and you don't know if it's human, AI, or a combination of human and AI. And we are working on a worldwide standard. This has been accepted by the IEEE organization, and there'll be a published paper on this soon. There'll be a graphic and auditory tones that everybody in the world presumably will come to identify as the signature for knowing which of these situations exists, whether it's human, AI, or a combination. And then there is what I talked about at the Banff meeting in Paris, vascularized composite allografts and regenerative medicine. And you could imagine that bioelectricity, as talked about by Michael Levine, will be required for that to actually work, just as will probably be the case in all regenerative medicine complex organs. And it's interesting how rarefied an area of intellectual inquiry that is at the moment. There are not a lot of people working on it. This is a picture of Michael Levine here at the bottom, and he and I have more and more interaction. We're writing a paper together about AI and regenerative medicine that talks about the possibility that AI may enable stem cell generated complex organs that we never otherwise would have been able to create. So these are the various stages of AI that OpenAI has imagined. Right now, we're at level 2. In 2025, we will have agents. So if you want to book a trip or something, you'll be able to get an AI to do all that for you. Presumably, it will be phishing scam proof so that your AI won't be cheated by some phishing website out there. That's one of the challenges that they're working on right now, but I think it should be working later in 2025. And then there'll be what I have been talking about here, the idea of scientific discovery, that new things will be discovered that humans could have never found without AI. And then it will also transform organizations. I'm sure there's steps beyond level 5. A lot of what AI can do is probably beyond human ken. And so that's interesting to think about. So if we could end the organ shortage, that would save 1 million lives a year. And of course, we've been thinking about this for a long time. It's one of these 24 big challenges the human race that we figure that AI can help us solve. And it's interesting to me, there's not a lot of other people identifying targets for these big problems that AI should be helping us solve. Yeah, I think it's kind of cool that our statement that we want to end the organ shortage is one of the first specific suggestions made of what we should use the powers of AI for. Now, the problems that these graphics depict are still there, haven't been solved since 2013. This is the idea of not being able to get the right cells in the right places. When you decellularize and recellularize a kidney, you get, for instance, podocytes wandering around in the interstitium. They should be all within the glomerulus, but that's not where they end up. And there's also the problem of the long loop of Henle and being able to concentrate the urine. I think many human beings have thought that this is impossible or a thing that could not occur in our lifetime, just with human agency, but probably with AI, we will be able to solve it. Those of you who listened to Biden's farewell speech last night know he talked about a fair shot for everyone. So that's what I'm suggesting here, that you probably thought these things were very remote from you and you had no skills personally that couldn't help make them happen. But I would point out that we really don't know how to make functioning complex organs from stem cells in a way that would be practical and work. And when AI begins making suggestions about that, one or more of you could actually pick the winning suggestion and help make it happen. Yeah, and that's not the only area in which you could contribute. Yeah, so I think I will end there, and we can discuss. Yeah, so it's sort of interesting. You may know that Michael Levine talked about bioelectricity, which is a way in lower animals to get entire organs to be created just by giving the right electrical signal. He does have that working a little bit in mammalian tissues, believe it or not. So he's getting there. And dealing with him is very interesting. He has office hours every week, and I'm one of the people allowed to join the office hours. There's a risk, though, because there are a lot of smart people there. And if you ask a lot of stupid questions, I think you can do yourself a big disservice. And he said he can't start writing this paper with me till the end of January. So a couple of weeks from now is when the real interaction between us will start. And he's a very impressive guy. But I think a lot of other people who are used to being successful in their professional lives may turn out to be not the ideal person to really get a new idea from AI working because they're too used to running the show, right? You need to be a little bit humble. You need a little bit of humility for this to work, to let the ideas from AI that you never would have had in and start looking at whether they can be practical. Talking about being humble can bring us back to the Banff classification. It has that name because I knew that Banff would never, it wasn't a big enough place to have a medical school. So if you gave that name to a classification, the whole world could own it. And that's why there is no competing classification. If I'd called it the Kim Solez classification, there would be 400, 500 others, and things would be a complete mess. So being humble and trying to figure out how to make things practical for everybody to use in a co-equal way, it's kind of what we need to do now to get these ideas from smarter than human AI. If you believe in that, may not believe it exists yet, but it certainly will soon, to get those working and to bring about medical advances that humans could never have brought about on their own. Okay, so that's 35 minutes, and I welcome discussion, including spirited discussion. Such Debbie, do you have any interest in starting off? I know you have to leave
Um,
early.
oh, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, that was fantastic. That was so worth being late for rounds. I think I think when you look, the thing that I thought was so interesting was the
Can I get
chart.
the sleeves?
I've muted
Oh,
Richard.
oh,
So,
but the
so
chart, the chart that you put in terms of all the things that we could be using AI for in the future. I mean, it really it was a significant portion of what us, when you think of everything, I
yeah,
think it was pretty awesome that it's there. And I think um, when you look for every part of transplant in terms of a donor assessment, when we look at even recipient assessment, especially in thoracic, these things are so important, all the way down to monitoring, surveillance, and looking at classifying patients for chronic dysfunction of their graft. So I'm really excited for this, and I think you are the leader in the world in this and have kind of taken it on as your own. And now you are basically the expert. And I think let's see where we're going with it. Super excited to see your journey.
so there's another way to think about that. When you end up somewhere where there's no one else, that may be because you made a serious strategic error, right? So you might be right that I'm like the first person in this area of picking targets for what we want AI to fix. But it may also be that I'm involved in a fool's errand here, and a proper way to do this that I'm not following the rules of, and so on. Yeah. So there is that possibility that when I find myself in that rarefied environment, as I was talking about, where I seem to be trying to do something that no one else is trying to do, there are multiple ways that one might explain being in that
Well, I
situation.
think I think you've done things like that in the past and they've been incredibly successful. So I think we have good faith.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for your confidence. Other questions? So I wonder, Majid Sikosana, if you're available. Majid gave a talk on xenotransplantation before the one that I gave. So that's where mine is called The Rest of the Story. And I actually learned a lot from his presentation. He's quite a busy guy clinically and may not be active in his Zoom square at the moment, but I
No,
wanted you to.
I'm there. I'm there.
Oh,
I'm there.
good, cool, yeah. So, so any thoughts, Majid? Um,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, that was a good talk. Yeah, I think the way I see it from AI, we're still trying to figure out how to best leverage it. I think currently we're just using it to make, I use AI to make my gym plans and plan my life and diets and so forth. But on a higher level, that's going to be it. The people who are going to be successful, the people who are going to leverage it and use it properly. I think you're looking at it from a multifaceted point of view, the ethical, biochemical, and everything. I think, yeah, there's great things coming.
yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so
Yeah, Dr. Loda, I have a question. So
yeah,
you talk about, first of all, it's great talk. I enjoy listening to it. First of all, I have
yeah,
a question. You say like AI will be the future of xenotransplant, but now the issue is because for the AI, we need a lot of data for like a training. But in this case, in the xenotransplant, actually, we have very, very few cases of xenotransplant. And I don't know how soon we can reach like that level for training that for like a training AI training for the
yeah.
transplant.
But I think I'm thinking about it differently. I'm thinking about its persuasive powers, which are way beyond humans. So it can be more convincing and talking people into things. And you'll find when I spoke at the Mayo Clinic, one of the big questions was this all sounds great, but of course, no humans are going to sign up for the clinical trials because they're all, skeptical about science and risk averse and so on. And I understand that that was the past, but I could imagine you could use AI to provide a very effective, persuasive approach to get many more patients to sign up for clinical trials. And that doesn't require a large amount of data. It's not about the science of Xeno, but the science of talking other humans into things and getting them to sign on the dotted line. And so there's ethics about that, right? We're talking about
Mhm.
ethics. Is that ethical? If I suppose you can argue, well, it's going to benefit the human race that we get these trials going. If the trials are well conducted, it may also help the individual patients who are part of them. Um, but it gives us something else to think about in terms of the ethics. That's an AI effect that one could have even if you don't have any training data at all on the actual xenotransplant procedure. It's just in convincing humans to do things. Yeah. And that's already well honed. Everything about AI safety, you'll find a paragraph about this persuasive ability of AI. It's one of the dangers of the future. Yeah. So it's well documented. In that sense, the data already exists. You don't really need more
Mhm.
data.
One other aspect of this is Richard Levinson, in case
Yeah.
I'm invisible. Yeah, of the AI sort of human interaction is something that I've started to work on, and I think have a session at DPA on it on what I'm calling pathology as a public service. but it really is basically the democratization of path talk to real people, especially patients, so that it can generate and then interact with patients who've received a completely incomprehensible pathology diagnosis. And I think there's an element of persuasion in there as well, because you can then persuade the patient to do the right thing at that point. And you can also educate the probably largely clueless clinicians who don't understand path speak either.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think the positive side, I mean, I guess one of the things that you may be wondering about, having listened to me give this lecture, is how my life experience is different from yours and so on. But one way is that, for instance, I enjoy making videos, watching videos, editing videos. That's a large amount of every single day of mine. You may spend zero time doing that. I spend a lot of time. And so, for instance, Michael Levine has hundreds of videos, and I'm probably the only person you ever talk to who's watched them all, right? So I so my experiencing life is slightly different from yours. You can do it entirely without any videos at all, making them or watching them, right? So yeah, it's just one way in which my point of view is different from yours. On the other hand, TV, I didn't have TV growing up. I don't have TV now. I don't spend any time watching TV. So every moment you're watching TV. Also complaining. I don't spend any time complaining at all. I never have. The residents in my program talked to me quite sternly about that, said, listen, things are very bad here. It's our duty to complain. I said, I think you're doing enough for all of us. Yeah. So I probably spend my day differently from you also. Any other questions?
Oh, Sam, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. I think you bring up a lot of good points about the possibilities for AI and how it could make patient experience better. It can improve the care which patients may receive. But from the perspective of someone who designs algorithms, implements algorithms, um, so I think that AI still has a long way to go before I would trust it to do those kind of things. Do you have any concerns in regards to either implementation or flexibility or
No.
ethical considerations
Yeah.
into, what if we get an AI derived decision that you don't agree with or you don't think it's right? So what kind of safeguards would need to be in place with this type of integrated AI?
So I think initially it will be much more fine-tunable than any human decision you've ever received. Think of the last time that somebody told you about some, decision that they made. Was that something you could easily contest? Well, maybe so, maybe not. But I think with AI, the starting point is that they sort of have all the time in the world, just like in the movie Her, she could maintain hundreds of relationships at the same time. So a lot of things are going to be much easier than they have been in the past. You also need to think of a really long trajectory. My recent Kidney 360 editorial talks about 90 years, that 90 years from now, there'll be no human physicians in medicine at all. Everything will be completely taken over by machines doing the clinical, the surgery, the pathology, the radiology, everything. And humans will like that much better. The only humans left in medicine will be the human patients. There won't be any human physicians. And we'll be happier because we can spend our time in like the optimal way doing ritual meetings with friends and family and stuff. And that can be quite fruitful. We can make decisions there that are consequential. It's just not a job, and we're not being paid for it. But you could spend whatever is your most pleasurable kind of human interaction, spend your entire days just doing that stuff. So it's I I think you just have to take the long view, and you know that Agnes Fogel and I are debating this future of AI in front of 4,500 people in India on February 7th. And yeah, so I'm giving you kind of a hint of some of the things that I'm going to say there. But just think about the limits of human leaders, the limits of human decision making. I don't know, you may not have listened to the news for years because you find it so, depressing, but the last time you did watch the news, think of the evidence for humans as good stewards of the earth, and I think you would probably conclude that there is no human you can name who you would want to put in charge of stewardship of the earth. And yet, some of the biases being built into San Francisco created AI, the guardrails are getting better and better every day, right? To prevent those models from doing bad stuff. And those will be the kind of decision parameters if AI is in some sense in charge of the world, but you can endlessly fine tune your own personal situation and the local environment and so on, much more than you can with humans in charge, because humans get irritated if you bother them too much and ask too many questions. And yeah, so there are a lot of limits that humans have that are very demonstrated by the newspaper headlines every day, every year. So, and what about hallucination? Somebody's going to ask that, right? But that's a part of AI creativity. It's being modified more and more day by day, so it produces fewer errors and more creative thoughts. And so that's the way that's going. But just like when you have a fantasy, that's good because it's a part of your creativity and may have a positive outcome. AI hallucination is sort of the AI equivalent of having fantasy ideation in the human mind. Other questions?
This was really great. I do really agree with you that AI is really going to help xenotransplantation because if you think about as these trials get bigger and bigger potentially, there aren't many pathologists who've reviewed like the data. I mean, I've only reviewed animal models like pig to monkey, but I know you have Ivy Rosales and Bob Colvin in Boston, and then the Paris transplant group's helping the NYU group, and I think Ming Wu was there with Bob Montgomery, but I'm not sure if she's there anymore, and then Huma Fatima in at UAB, but there really aren't many people, and so I think that's one thing that this digital pathology working group could help with too is
Sure.
helping put together that data and helping with it build an AI model that could help pathologists, because if it's rolled out to other centers, then the pathologists at these centers, even if they're renal pathologists, there are going to be things that the renal pathologists haven't seen. Um,
Mhm.
so I think that the AI is possibly going to need to really help with that.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate that you had choices of how to spend the last hour, and I'm honored that so many people were here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Cool.
well, thanks for giving the talk, and I'll see everyone in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Y'all
thank
Bye.
take
you.
care. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Right.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.